Between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates. Welcome, one and all, to the VRRC Touring Car Trophy. You're, of course, joining us for round 4 of the championship. And no, I know what you're thinking. Andy McEwan sounds a bit weird. What happened to him? Unfortunately, Andy McEwan is not with us for this evening. He's taken family priorities for some unknown reason. He's gone to have dinner with his mother. I just can't believe his lack of commitment to the cause. But here we are. We've just got me for tonight. I am, of course, joined by Lewis Edwards. And for part of the evening, I might also be joined by Rich Hayden. But he does have a lot of clerking of the coursing and things like that, directing of the racing and all that sort of thing to be dealing with as well. And there's plenty of racing that's going to be going on through this evening. It's one of the most unique circuits we've got on the calendar, and it's actually the kickstart to our double Deutschland experience. We're heading to the Norisring this evening, and then next week off to the Nürburgring. The Norisring, of course, in the village or the city of Nuremberg. I'll get more into the history of the Norisring a little later on. Then we're off to Barcelona on the 14th of December before we nearly get to Christmas at Imola. And then, of course, we round out the season at Brands Hatch on the 28th of December, just after the Christmas period, of course. Last time out at Spa, we saw Josh Martin take the top step of the podium in terms of the amount of points that he gained. He had a good evening, just ahead of Eric Axelsson, who discovered his ability to drive a touring car again after his rather poor showing, shall we say, at Paul Ricard when he blew up an engine. Carl Felvis ended up coming home in third as well over the course of those 2 races. And how's that leave the championship? Well, Scott Bugner, who I haven't mentioned at all so far during this evening, still sits atop of the championship, I should say, with 86 points to his name. Kyle Felvis just about trails him, 84 points, only 2 points between them is very interesting indeed. But Bugner has a worse drop round than Kyle Felvis at the moment. Kyle Felvis has been the more consistent driver over the first 3 rounds. Josh Martin trails away a little bit, but probably not to be forgotten, I would say, in terms of the championship lead. But he is probably fighting with Eric Axelsson for that top 3 position. Then you got Jack Smith a bit further back, and then it all gets a little bit tighter as well, with Andy Dorman all the way down to Jens Verhoeven, separated by just 3 points. And in fact, Paolo Tempera and Jens Verhoeven tied on 58. So very close between all of the drivers in the top 10 as it currently stands. What are they racing for? Well, I can tell you that they're racing for the Aegon curved display monitor. Well, that's the first place anyway. A 34-inch curved display monitor. And I have to say, I've got one on my VRRC Simrig 5 to my left as I'm commentating at the moment. And I have to say, it's a damn good monitor. So whoever wins that one will be coming away with a rather tasty prize. That's not to say that the 27-inch or the 24-inch displays are any worse, that they'll go to the 2nd and 3rd place drivers in the championship. Again, never a bad thing to be gifted a brand new monitor from Aegon. There's also driver of the rounds up for offering, and because Andy McEwan's not here, it'll be up to me, Lewis Edwards, and of course Rich Hayden to decide on those drivers who are going to win that one as well. Right, before we get into the history of the Norisring, we might as well have a quick look at what it looks like behind the wheel of one of these VRRC touring car trophy cars. Off you go.
Hello everyone and welcome to the 4th round of the Aegon by AOC Touring Car Championship Season 3. We're here at Norisring for the halfway mark of the season. Into turn 1 you want to brake just before the 100-metre board. You want to go down into first gear, taking a slightly later apex and short shifting up to 2nd on the power to dull the wheel spin, using all of the road all the way up to the wall as close as you dare. Back over to the left hand side for the only chicane on the track. You want to sacrifice this right hander to make sure that we can open up the left-hander nicely here, which we do really well up against the walls using all of the road that we dare. Now we've got a little flat-out section as we approach the final corner on the track. You want to get over to the right-hand side as close to the pavement as you dare and get it in nice and early to the apex and get back to the power as quickly as you can, using up all of the road available, and then cutting all the way up to this wall here on the left hand side to minimise the distance, and that completes a very short lap of Norisring.
And we are back in the room, and hopefully I'll remember how to talk, because I don't know what that intro was to that lap that we had just had the track lap. Again, I still can't talk about it. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll talk about qualifying, shall we? At the moment, you might have noticed in that lap that it's a very, very short amount of time it takes to get around this circuit, less than a minute. So think Brands Hatch Indy, think Silverstone National, and then stick it on a random street in Germany, and you've got the Norisring essentially. It's going to be very tight. We don't often do street circuits very often here at the VRRC, so it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. We have done the Norisring before, only a small handful of times though. I can remember it popping up on championships. I couldn't tell you which championships it's been done though, and very rarely does it ever pop up in any other championship that I've covered in terms of sim racing, or of course real life racing as well, because I don't cover the DTM or the Formula 3 European Series. So it's yeah, a bit of a unique circuit. And in the driver's briefing we did have Rich Hayden basically sit everybody down, and apparently he told them, you've got to be careful through the first hairpin, you've got to be careful through the last hairpin, and you've got to be careful in that chicane in the middle. Scott Bugner's clearly not listened to the chicane in the middle bit, as he cannons into the wall there after trying to clip the apex too much. A little Charles Leclerc-esque in Monaco, I would say that. But yes, essentially he told them to be careful everywhere on this circuit. There are only really 4 corners, the 2 that make up the chicane, the first hairpin and the final hairpin. And yeah, so it's going to be a little bit tight. They of course have to, in qualifying as well, stick to the outside of the circuit when they come out of the pit lanes, so they don't interrupt any drivers going through on the racing line through the first corner as well. We can see Eric Axelsen going through the final corner, and at the moment a little bit far behind in 10th place. Arguably, you'd say though, in 2.5 tenths behind pole position wouldn't be the end of the world on most circuits. And there we go, he gets himself up to 6th. He's now less than 1/10 of a second just behind our pole position man of Elliot Dalton-Ayres. But the top 6 now currently separated by less than 1/10 of a second. That is how close it is, and we're expecting times to be, if anything, bang on each other. I think we saw Josh Martin potentially equaling somebody else's time just before we go into qualifying tonight, as we were having a look at that track guide. We probably expect to see the same in qualifying as well. Yeah, it was Josh Martin and Scott Bugner, I'm being reliably informed by Lewis Edwards on the broadcast. So plenty of drivers are going to be nice and close to each other. Slipstream is probably going to be an important thing, just because I don't think it's going to be massive in terms of, you're not going to find 2/10 around here, but you might find that 1/2 tenth that you need to try and get yourself onto that pole position. Elliot Dalton-Ayres is doing a fantastic job though, and Joel Lask as well in 2nd place. Oliver Gibson. Normally we talk about drivers who are out of position when they're too far down the field. I don't think Oliver Gibson's going to be too insulted if I say that. That is an unusual place to find him. He is brother to Jack Smith, who is an exceptionally quick sim racer, but Oliver Gibson we've not quite seen the best of, we feel. Well, tonight, maybe a slight difference to that. And in fact, here it is Jack Smith actually on a faster time, is he? Potentially, as he comes across the line, we'll be able to see, jumps himself up to 11th position, so not exactly setting the world alight like Jack Smith, but not entirely bad either. He did actually only just jump in time for qualifying. He did do plenty of laps before that, but he wasn't here within the hour before we lead up to this qualifying session. I think the driver who did the most amount of laps in practice, by the way, if anybody is curious, is Sam Zero. And Sam Zero managed to do 300 plus laps when it came down to the practice sessions. Where is he currently sitting? He's 16th place in the qualifying session. So not terrible, probably a little bit quicker than we've been seeing him recently. Maybe the hard work is starting to translate into some quicker lap times. There's Josh Martin currently in 13th place. 2.5 tenths separate the top 13. That is, of course, at the moment, Josh Martin in 13th position. The magic second margin, which is quite often what I talk about when we talk about Brands Hatch Indy, currently separates nearly the entire field as Stuart Vickers just goes out there to set one time, but he hasn't set a fast time yet, so I expect that to go a little bit closer. But the top 19, pretty much everybody's separated by less than 1 whole second. Josh Martin coming across the line. A couple of good results, Josh Martin, recently. I believe, if I just get my stats up, which I probably should have had early on. Yeah, 3rd in the championship, taking home a victory last time out at Spa. I remember him coming into the interview room and asking if we can just race every single evening at Spa. He loves it, and clearly at the Norisring might not be his cup of tea. And to be fair, it is a very different circuit to Spar the Francorchamps. Eric Axelson, though, he seems to have upped his game a little bit once again, qualifying currently in third position. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, though, is absolutely flying lap time, hasn't he, with that 55.209. That's pretty damn good. Seems fairly untouchable, even though the likes of Joel Lask is about 100th behind him, 100th and a half, actually, or 14,000th of a second, as Andy McEwan will probably correctly tell me how to say it. It seems very, very close indeed. And in fact, I think Eric Axelson is pretty much... yeah, he's exactly the same margin away from Joel Lask as Joel Lask is to Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Currently, the pole time is 0.3 of a second off of the current fastest time in practice, but that might have just been shattered because Oliver Gibson, with 3 fastest sectors, in fact, interestingly enough, actually, they're not 3 purple sectors, they're just 3 green sectors, meaning he's not actually the quickest in any one particular part of the circuit, but he's just gone and put himself onto pole position by a staggering 1/10 of a second ahead of Eric Axelson, who probably thought he had that pole position wrapped up when he set his time that just about beat Joel Lask, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and Carl Felvers, who all 4 actually went quicker than our previous pole sitter, Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Massive amount of margin. And apparently 3 people, in fact, those top 3, Gibson, Axelson, and Lask, all beat that fastest time that we saw in practice. So the driver's clearly turning up when they know they need it most. Now, the screen's a little bit pixelated here, but I think we have a variety of manufacturers as well in that top 5 positions. 2 Audis, I think a Lincoln Co. Potentially a Hyundai, is that in Joel Lask? I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, Hyundai, and of course an Alfa Romeo and Andy Carroll. And I think that's a Honda and Elliot Dalton-Ayres. It is a little bit pixelated on my screen, so I do apologise if I get them slightly wrong. But yeah, as the checkered flag drops, Eric Axelson has no longer got an option to improve on his second position. He could get potentially a front row position taken away from him. I'm not seeing many drivers actually improve that much over the course of the last couple of laps. So it's likely to be Oliver Gibson on pole position. In fact, he pretty much finishes his time 3.5 tenths down. So he's taking it nice and easy. Andy Carroll here, the highest placed Alfa Romeo. We do love to see them flying around on the circuit. As Joel Lask comes across the line. Now, he was in 3rd place, and he remains in 3rd place. Kyle Felvers, just looking at him, he's got a fast Sector 2, and not anything to write home about in Sector 1 at the moment. But having said that, it's only about 100th behind of what we see on the pole position time. But as the checkered flag drops for everybody, it's unlike, well, we're not going to see anybody changing. So Oliver Gibson and Eric Axelson make up the front row of the grid. And we'll be back with to have a quick chat with Oliver Gibson for the first time this series after this short break. Now, because Andy McEwan has got his priorities all wrong, it gives me the great honour of interviewing the pole man. And that man is Oliver Gibson. First time to the commentary box, I believe. Oliver, it's a pleasure to have you here. That was an absolute flyer of a lap.
Thank you. Yeah, first time on pole and obviously here as well. So I'm very happy.
Where did that come from? Because I don't think, hopefully you won't be too insulted if I say, we haven't seen pole position pace from you in the previous couple of rounds, have we? But all of a sudden you've turned up to the Norisring and whacked it on pole position. As I said, where did it come from?
To be honest, I don't have an answer for that. Like you said, yeah, the last few races haven't been fantastic. So I must be more suited to shorter tracks. But yeah, I was nowhere near that time in practice, and it just appeared.
Were you following anybody? Were you following Eric Axelson or your brother potentially, or Joel Lasker, anybody like that, to try and learn some tips and have that sort of natural instinct to chase someone? Or were you on your own? Because we didn't see much of it.
I was behind Eric, but Jack gave me some tips on what to do before, so I just followed what he was doing, and then yeah. But Eric was in front of me, so that might have helped.
Little bit of insider information I'm looking for here, because I haven't done any laps ever of the Norisring. Slipstream, is that going to take in? Is that going to sort of make any difference around here? Because of course, those two hairpins, big, strong overtaking opportunities.
To be honest, I don't think there's enough straight for you to really get an advantage. But I think if you're close enough, it is possible to have the slipstream and then send one down the inside.
Are you going to be wary of that as well going into turn one? It's a tight turn one here, isn't it? It's like Spa, but the other way around. And we saw a little bit of carnage of that last week in the second race, at least.
Yeah, I think turn one, I'm just gonna take it as pedestrian as possible. Try to avoid. Sorry, the DTM start the other year. So I'm just gonna be as calm and collected as possible.
Hannah, how is that going for you so far? With 3 minutes to go, having to concentrate on doing an interview, is that a good distraction, or would you rather me shut up so you can go and focus?
To be honest, it keeps the pressure off. So yeah.
Well, fair enough. I'm going to go and let you build the pressure up on your own, though. So congratulations, Oliver, on the pole position. You never know. We could be speaking to you after this race as well.
Hopefully, thank you.
And that was Oliver Gibson, pole position for the first time, and actually first time coming into the commentary box, like I said when I was introducing him. And so delightful to have him in to have a chat with us, and delightful to have him on the front row. And what I didn't mention to him was he's got probably the best starter in VRRC sat alongside him. It doesn't seem to matter what car. Eric Axelson just has a knack of getting them off the line. So I'm sure Oliver will know full well of that. And I'm sure Jack Smith will probably be reminding him of that as we speak, as they're probably having a chat to each other on the Discord at the moment. It's going to be very interesting to see if Eric can get the start he's looking for and is able to potentially go around the outside of Oliver Gibson, who just said he was taking it a little bit easy, going a little bit pedestrian. If we're talking about Oliver Gibson, let's have a look at him in the championship standings. He's 13th at the moment, 45 points. He's 4 points behind Elliot Daltonaires, who, of course, did look like he was taking a pole position for a large part of that session. He will have gained a couple of points just for that getting pole. He's currently racing against the likes of Ethan Hill, who unfortunately hasn't really been around too much so far this championship. Based basically on the fact that his computer doesn't seem to want him to race in it. Every time he tries, it breaks on him. Apart from a Spa, where he did manage it, but didn't have the best luck at all. Hopefully he's back tonight and is able to do a full evening with us. Thank you very much to everybody who's dropping in on the YouTube chat as well. We've got Matt DeVoit, I believe, in the YouTube chat, a new commenter on the stream, which is delightful. Of course, we've got the likes of Julie Bradshaw and Adrian Felvers jumping along as well. So big thank you to everybody who's jumping in. And it's nice to have a little bit of communication with you guys in the chat, because at the end of the day, I'm feeling pretty lonely here today. Hopefully we'll be able to get Rich Hayden in to have a chat with us. But with only the two 20-minute races, it is a little bit difficult, as he is there trying to dictate whether a safety car is needed on the first lap, whether we have blue flags towards the end of the race as well, and everything like that, because we are likely to see the fastest cars end up lapping some of the slower cars, even though they are so closely matched in terms of the lap times in qualifying. You do have crashes, you have incidents, you have people racing each other wheel to wheel, which slows everybody up as well. So we are likely to see a few lapped cars, and those back markers can cause a little bit of spice, a little bit of action towards the front of the field as well. So, as the lights are about to come on your screen, it's about that time that we start getting excited for the first race here at the VRRC Touring Car Trophy. All 5 lights need to be ignited. 6 lights, actually. I always get that confused. 6 lights to be ignited. Engine lights are rising. And it's about that time here on a Wednesday night at the VRRC. We go racing. Oliver Gibson with a decent start, but Eric Axelsson not quite as good a start as I was potentially expecting, actually. He's still in second place, but he's in no means into the first position as they go into the braking zone for the first time. And it's a big lunge at the inside by Joel Lask. Oliver Gibson gets sandwiched somewhat in the middle of that corner, and Joel Lask saw an opportunity and he went for it. There's a pile-up at the back end of the field. I think maybe Josh Martin is involved with that. Yes, he's down to, now he's up to 14th position, actually. But Joel Lask leads the way. Oliver Gibson maintains that second place. Carl Felvis moves up as Eric Axelsson gets hung out to dry, shall we say, as Elliot Dalton-Ayres makes his way through as well. Andy Carroll's had a bit of a mare at the start as we see 2 drivers trying to scrap it out for the same bit of tarmac. Elliot Dalton-Ayres is one of them, and I believe Nicky Taylor is the other one. Eric Axelsson on the outside of 3 wide going through the final corner. It looks like it's good news for Joel Lask and good news for Oliver Gibson as these 3 fight over that bottom step of the podium. Elliot Dalton-Ayres at the moment occupying that position with Eric Axelsson, and then Kyle Felvis for company as they go across the line. How are they going to settle themselves into T1? Is Carl Felvis going to look up the inside? It's a bit ambitious. Elliot Dalton-Ayres tries to defend that right to the middle of the circuit. Oliver Gibson went a little bit wide as Eric Axelsson gets muscled out of the way by Elliot Dalton-Ayres. And that allows Carl Felvis to have a bit of a run on him as they go into the chicane. The top 2 pulling away nicely. Andy Carroll really didn't have the best start there, did he? The Alpha has dropped down into 8th place as Elliot Dalton-Ayres now slots himself into 3rd quite convincingly. And Carl Felvis and Eric Axelsson pretty much driving each other off the road on the left-hand side there. A flash of the lights from Eric Axelsson. I'm not entirely sure which way to call that. I'll leave that one to the stewards because I only saw the aftermath of it. I didn't see who made the initial moves or anything like that. Now, to be honest, though, to move all the way from one side of the circuit to the other, from a defensive point of view, i.e. Kyle Felvis, it always looks a bit suspicious. Potentially looks a bit worse than it is on the live cameras. So we'll wait and see as Eric Axelsson tries to use the slipstream to dive around the outside, nice and late on the brakes. Is he overcommitting Kyle Felvis to try and get that cutback? The problem is for Eric Axelsson, if he does get the cutback, and Kyle does shut the door once again, but to be fair to him that time, I don't think Eric had the full run on him. I don't think he had the positions made up as the Civic. But we saw a Spa having very loose on the rear end, hits the wall, and it does seem to be struggling with that rear end yet again. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, nice car control last week, but it wasn't exactly the fastest thing in the world. And maybe that's why he can get one flying lap out of that Honda. Couldn't do it again in qualifying. He only had one time where it looked like a pole position winner, and he couldn't do it again. That's why he ended up having to settle for 5th position. Now, a ding in my ear indicates that I am joined by another soul in the commentary box, or at least another virtual soul, I should say, and it's the return of race director Rich Hayden. That opening corner looks a bit tasty, Rich, but no need for a safety car.
Good to Narben, everybody. Hi, Jack, everybody. Yeah, no, not quite. There was quite a bit of contact at the back, but it only looked like Alec was affected by it, so I didn't call a safety car for that. But yeah, definitely some drivers getting a little bit tasty on the brake, so just keeping an eye on things.
I was going to say, you might not have seen it because you were trying to figure out if there was anything that needed sorting out, shall we say, any traditionals that needed to be thrown around the place. But Joel Lask up to first place on Oliver Gibson. He just threw it down the inside of Eric Axelsson and Oliver Gibson. It was a brilliant move. Did you manage to catch any of that?
I missed that, unfortunately. I was looking a little bit further back down the pack at the time, but yeah, I've got my eyes on Joel at the moment. So it looks like he's managing his gap quite well. Oliver's quite tasty behind him, though, I have to say.
I was going to say, Oliver, we were chatting to him in that interview just before we went into the race, actually. I got the impression that he would be slightly more comfortable actually following another driver, to be honest, rather than actually leading the pack. So he's probably not too bummed about being behind Joel Lask at this particular point. It is easier to follow than be followed, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard the interview with Oliver, and obviously he's put in quite a few practice laps for this. It's a new track to most people. But it's fairly simple. There's 4 corners, but still creating some chaos.
It's amazing, though, the differences that you can have in even driving styles, let alone lap times and everything, with just 4 corners, can't we? They're all
Yeah.
incredibly close, and you just think, oh, you only need half a tenth per corner, and all of a sudden you're 2 tenths up. But those half a tenths per corner are ridiculously hard to find, aren't they?
Yeah, the chicane in the middle of the lap is tricky to get right. You have to really sacrifice the entry for the right-hander to get a good exit on the left. Just saw a little bit of contact there, Nicky Taylor in the background, so hopefully he's not lost out too much. No, it doesn't look like it. I am surprised Eric's not making any roads into Kyle at the moment, though.
I was going to say, Kyle, after some robust defending, I'll leave that to the stewards after the race and everything like that to talk about. I don't think there was anything that needed to be sort of protested, but it's certainly robust out there. He's managed to get a little bit of a gap to Eric Axelson, hasn't he? And that's quite impressive in terms of the out-and-out pace that Kyle is showing here today. And also Elliot Dalton-Ayres. I think we're slightly surprised by Oliver Gibson. I'm not as surprised by Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who's shown in previous championships he can be quite quick. But after that qualifying session, I thought, oh, maybe he's going to drop back. Maybe he won't do as well in the race. But right now, he looks like he's piling an enormous amount of pressure to get that second.
Yeah, it does look he's getting really close to Oliver, isn't he? So, yeah, it's quite interesting. With regards to that defending by Kyle, yeah, it's been noted. We will look at it. So I did see it in the background going on. I just want to take a closer look at that after the race.
Absolutely, of course. No need to rush into any decisions here at Norisring, of course. And it's interesting to see the likes of Nicky Taylor sort of down in 6th position without, again, making any inroads. And Scott Bugner as well, down in 9th place. That surprise you at all?
Yeah, do you know what? Quite a few drivers I think are out of position. Nicky for sure, and Scott totally out of position from where you'd expect to see them. But the one thing that actually, I don't know if you mentioned it earlier on in the factoids, but this is so heavy on brakes with the 2 big stops going into the 2 big hairpins. So brakes are getting really hot. So you're actually feeling the brakes go off after about 4 laps. Your braking performance really dips.
Oh, Oliver Gibson running a little bit wide there. Elliot Dalton-Ayres getting a sniff up the inside, but to be fair to Oliver, he actually managed to get back on the power. Maybe he was a little bit wide, but that allowed him to get a little bit more momentum and minimum speed through the corner. You see, I'm always very interested when you're talking about sort of brakes going off and everything like that, because that runs almost closer into a hardware gap, that I would say, than a skill-based gap, Rich. And as you know, you're a hardware kind of guy since you sell these simulators and different brake pedals and everything like that. If you've got, say, a hydraulic brake pedal compared to your 180-pound Thrustmaster brake pedal or something like that, feeling the sponginess of those brakes can be a massive difference between lap times as well, can't you? Just based on the hardware that you use, and I'll come back to that point in a quick second, because Carl Felvers is launching one up the inside of Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and after a failed move nearly a lap ago, Carl Felvers really late on the brakes, and he might actually get 2nd place. Oliver Gibson just decided to leave the postcode and leave a door wide open for the likes of Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Carl Felvers. Now, he might be able to hold on to 3rd place ahead of Elliot Dalton-Ayres, but into the chicane is not somewhere you really want to lunge up the inside, as the Audi of Carl Felvers, I should say, gets a little bit tasty on the rear end, and Eric Axelson decides to hit the wall in his bid to try and catch up to these 3 drivers. It's getting a little bit close for comfort for some of them as they go. Oh, that's John Last lagging out badly. I'm not sure what's happening to him. He needs to be able to have his internet. Is he crabbing, or is that internet?
Well, he just went sideways into the final hairpin there, so I don't know whether it was anything to. I didn't see him lag. I think he literally just lost the back end, which is quite interesting to see. Sorry, to answer your question from before, the problem with the brakes is they're getting over temperature. They're going too hot. So you wouldn't feel that through your brake pedals, but for sure a set of hydraulic brake pedals are always going to have better feel. Elliot's lagging quite a lot, I'm noticing. I don't know if you're seeing that on the broadcast as well.
Yeah, it's definitely coming through on our screens at the moment. And that can be, I'll let you concentrate, Rich, on race directing for the time being. Explain to the ladies and gentlemen the reason why I'm letting him have off. Oh, as we have a little bit of an incident in the background as well. It's just good timing that in terms of letting Rich be able to go and do his judicials as Paul Laramie, and is that John Jones or Airlock Iyengar who was involved with that as well? Not entirely sure. Rich is still here.
Oliver's just had an incident going into the final hairpin as well. He's dropped down behind Eric.
He has indeed, and actually they're pretty much side by side as they're coming across the line. But importantly, the Smart Fire car is going to be on the outside, but is a lot later on the brakes. Is he too late on the brakes? Is there a gap up the inside for Eric Axelsson? And again, Oliver Gibson misses the apex. It doesn't seem to matter too much. He's able to get on the power and run some more minimum speed, though. I saw a very interesting hot lap by, well, it wasn't a particularly interesting video, actually. It was Max Verstappen, though, on one of the F1 games, doing a lap around the Austrian Red Bull Ring, I believe it was, and he was stating that he doesn't bother really trying to go for the apex in turn 3 or 4. I can't remember which, the hairpin up the hill anyway. He doesn't bother going for the apex, Rich, because he finds that he can just run an extra couple of miles an hour if he misses it by half a car length, and that he prefers that.
Yeah, and you know what? It's so specific, corner by corner. You know, the just to give you I mean, it's a bit of an extreme example, but the Nordschleife. In real life, there are something like 15 different changes of tarmac all the way through that lap.
Yes.
So your grip is massively different, and some of the turning points are you just wouldn't expect it because there's more grip on the outside of the corner than on the inside because it's had a resurface. So yeah, sometimes it's not always essential to hit the apexes, but I mean, who are we to question Max Verstappen, huh?
Well, exactly. Yeah, can criticise him by not like him all we want, but question him and driving technique is something I won't do. To be fair.
Probably not. No. All right, I'm going to jump back into the other channel. I'll speak to you guys later.
See you in a bit, Rich.
Cheers, back.
Right, as Rich departs, potentially because there's going to be some lapped cars in the mix as well. We're actually watching the fight for 30. No, it's the fight for 12th, isn't it? With the Andy Dorman in the VW, just ahead of Jens Verhoeven and Paolo Tempera, and I think Jens Verhoeven was potentially involved with an incident right at the beginning of the race, which is a bit of a shame. Yeah, it's also a shame we didn't see what the incident was that involved Oliver Gibson, that dropped him down below and outside the top 3. He is still running, he's actually pulling ahead of... there's more incidents just ahead of the battle we've been watching, and Andy Dorman drops back. I think just because he took the corner a little bit almost overcautiously. Jens Verhoeven saw an opportunity and he went for it. Yeah, it did look like Andy Carroll potentially was the driver that was involved with that as well. Some very strange decision making towards the rear end of the field there. We didn't really see the full... Well, I was looking on my notes on the right hand side actually, so I didn't quite see the full repercussions of it. But Jens Verhoeven still going side by side with a battling Scott Bugner, leader of the championship, remember, Scott Bugner, all the way down outside the top 10 now. It's really not been a night to remember for him. It's 7.5 minutes to go around the Norisring. And we just mentioned the Nordschleife and the Nürburgring, as it's more commonly known, of course. They actually changed the name of this particular circuit to the Norisring because it's in Nuremberg, which is how he's supposed to pronounce it, apparently Nuremberg. And apparently one of their biggest tourist attractions is the fact that people get it mixed, and the biggest influx of money that they have in their economy is because people turn up here in Nuremberg so many times through the year thinking that the Nürburgring is actually based here in Nuremberg. So they changed it to the Norisring in an attempt to stop people coming and mistaking it for the Nürburgring. So yeah, interesting little factoid. I think that's right. I'm hoping that's right. It's off the website that I reliably use for all my other information on race circuits throughout the seasons. But yeah, Norris actually comes from a 17th century name for the city, apparently, which of course they decided to harp on back to when there was a little bit too much confusion around about the place. There's also fascinating stories about how the whole site actually managed to come to be in the Norisring, but it's about a particular political party that made themselves quite famous in World War II and was ran by a mustachioed man who we probably won't get too far into. But yeah, that is how this area originates. So there's actually a lot of historical importance around the Norisring and Congress halls and things like that were built up for those particular parties. So yeah, steeped in World War history, just like a lot of the circuits in Britain, which were old World War airfield, of course, as well. Jens Verhoeven, though, still trying to find a way past Scott Bugner. Scott did actually drop back down to 11th. Now he's back up to 10th place. As we see a little bit further up the field, Jack Smith trying to make any kind of attack on Ethan Hill, whose computer seems to be able to hold up this time round. Hopefully his car does as well as Jack Smith. Oh, he just sent it far too late into the corner. He ended up turning around Nicky Taylor, I believe it was, and then Eric Axelsson innocent bystander, really just trying to take the corner, but had nowhere to go. And Ethan Hill involved as well. But as Nicky Taylor drives away okay, Ethan Hill drives away okay, Eric Axelson's probably the driver who's cursing the name, unfortunately. And that was a big, big lunge into turn one. You do have to be careful. We did try and warn the drivers, but sometimes it just doesn't quite go through. 5 minutes to go. Looking further back, Jens Verhoeven still on the hunt for Scott Bugner, but instead of a fight for 10th place now, this is, of course, a fight for 9th because Jack Smith has DNF'd. He's gone back to the pit lane. Probably knew exactly what was going on. Oh my days. Scott Bugner. I didn't know whether he twitched right or whether he got contact from the rear or both at the same time. But as he goes into turn one, there was almost a massive incident down the main straight for Scott Bugner and Jens Verhoeven. And I think Jens Verhoeven probably would have had to hold his hand up for that one. Bump drafting is not really advised around in motorsport. It happens a lot in NASCAR. You could say it's an essential part of racing. It's not necessarily advised if you're not entirely sure on the track, on the cars, or indeed if you're not there in real life. Really, it's weirdly a bit easier to do in real life because you sort of have a sense and a feel of how everything's going on. Whereas in the sim, you're not 100% sure, even if you're making contact with the driver in front all the time. So yeah, it's spatial awareness is a little bit down. Even if you are using VR, it's a lot easier if you're using VR actually. That brings me on to another conversation point that I'll probably get into a little later on about hardware. We've already spoken about the difference in pedals and how much quicker you can be going if you're hydraulic brakes or load cell even. Is running a little bit wide there is Scott Bugner. Now, unlike Oliver Gibson, he doesn't seem to have been able to get the power down nice and cleanly. Now, he's locking the tyres up as they go into the chicane, and if Jens Verhoeven plays his cards right, he might be able to get the overspeed out of the corner. Doesn't look like he's able to quite get it together though, and Scott Bugner has done a great job at just about fending off that attack from Jens. He hasn't got many laps to actually figure this one out now. Not many overtaking opportunities left as we're now 3 minutes to go. Joel Lask still leads the way, by the way. And I've just been informed actually that as I'm talking about, oh my days, I said he was leading. Well, Carl Felvis saw a gap that I didn't see and decided to go for it. Now, in all fairness to Carl Felvis, I'd say it's all fairness, I'm not really sure if it is, but I think he just missed his braking zone and it was either go straight into the back of Joel Lask and miss the corner and spin him round, or just try and aim for a space where there is no car for the time being and just try and get those extra couple of meters to be able to slow the car down. And luckily, Joel Lask managed to keep it going, keep his foot planted at that front-wheel drive, and is able to pull away somewhat. But it's nice to see that the top four have somewhat all pulled up to each other, and in the last couple of laps, will be able to potentially have a race against each other for that victory. Like I was just saying, I was just talking about hardware, VR, triple monitors, hydraulic pedals, direct drive wheels, all these sort of things. I've been informed that Joel Lask actually runs on an old Thrustmaster with a broken set of pedals. So you can spend all the money in the world on the difference in hardware and everything like that, but sometimes if you've got a feel for your equipment, you know how it works, you know what you want to do with it, then sometimes that is good enough to make it work, isn't it? And that's exactly what Joel Lask is doing here. He's very, very quick in a front-wheel drive touring car. Carl Felvis as well has learned a lot over the past couple of months about driving in a front-wheel drive car. He always complained about having to drive front-wheel drive cars in the VRRC championships up until fairly recently, where he seemed to be able to get it together in the Civic Cups and other things like that. Well, here in the Audis and in the various touring cars, he's definitely been able to hook it up because he's driving very well, it seems, at the moment, even if he is going for gaps that aren't necessarily there. As they come across the line, it would look like this is going to be the penultimate lap that they're starting. Oh, Elliot Dalton-Air is going defensive with Oliver Gibson, jumping to the outside of the circuit. I think, again, in avoiding action more than anything else. Like Rich was saying, the brakes will be heating up. That means you've got to brake slightly earlier, which is maybe why we're seeing quite a few drivers being too late on the brakes, because their optimum racing line, their optimum braking position now has to move back a couple of meters. And if they're trying to lunge into someone, your brakes might be hotter than theirs, and therefore they're going to be spongier than theirs and everything like that. There's plenty to think about in racing. It's not as easy as point and go. And of course, we do try and make these as realistic as possible here at the VRRC. We don't mess around. We do go into the physics and into the setup to try and make them as pliable, but still as realistic as humanly possible in our championships. And that's what makes VRRC quite individual. We don't just use the stock cars. It's also why we use a Assetto Corsa as a simulator, because we can go in and we can make those changes ourselves and try and make them unique. That's how we end up with the hybrid systems. It's how we end up with the different tyre compounds and everything like that, because we have that fun ability to be able to go in and make those changes. Oliver Gibson and Elliot Dalton-Ayres have dropped off the back of these top two fighting. I think that's something to do with the fact that Elliot Dalton-Ayres was defending from Oliver Gibson, who was pushing a little bit too hard. Ended up hitting a wall about a lap ago. But we are on the final lap of the race, and it looks like Joel Lask, I would say, has a nice enough gap. Unless he clips the wall on the inside or on the outside here, it's going to be his victory, I feel, as Kyle Felvers tried his best, and he didn't quite succeed. Second place is nothing to be sniffed at here at the Norisring. No, as Joel Lask crosses the line, doesn't give us a flash of the lights, but I'm sure he'll be beaming from ear to ear inside the car, or inside his virtual car, inside his sim rig, I should say. Elliot Dalton-Ayres takes third place. Oliver Gibson from pole position ends up taking fourth, so we won't have a chat with him after the race, which is a bit of a shame, but it's still a good result from him. I think a championship best from him. Janicki Taylor ends up in the top 5, Ethan Hill in 6th place, Eric Axelson in 7th, Josh Martin in 8th, Jens Verhoeven ended up getting past Scott Bugner to get into top 9, and Scott Bugner rounds out the top 10. DNF drivers, Jack Smith and Stuart Vickers. Again, thank you very much to everybody who's jumping into the YouTube chat. We've also got William Malone saying some big moves out there on circuit, and there were big moves indeed, some more ambitious than others. We'll be able to have a quick chat to our podium sitters right after this short break. And we are back, and we're back with a whole host of drivers as well. We've got the top 3 from race number 1, and I'm going to start with first place, actually. We'll start with first. Joel Lask. Joel, big congratulations on that race victory. It was a big lunge up the inside into turn 1. Was that planned, or did you just see an opportunity?
Saw an opportunity, to be fair.
It was, I was going to say, carry on.
No, I just wanted to get ahead. So I knew it's going to be difficult for overtaking when it's sort of sent up the inside, saw the opportunity and went for it.
I was going to say, that was making it 3 wide with Eric Axelson on the outside and Oliver Gibson on the inside. Was that, as you just said it, you saw an opportunity, but 3 wide around the first corner, that is a risky opportunity, to say the least. Did that cross your mind?
It did, but the problem is with this track, it's really difficult to overtake, as you probably would have seen, so you have to sort of take every opportunity you can.
Yeah, it did look a little bit difficult. And towards the end of the race as well, when our cameras flicked back over to you, it looked like there was potentially some lunges up the inside coming your way as well. Were you expecting them in the closing stages?
Yeah, to be fair, I wasn't the quickest, and I knew that. But it's a bit easier to defend around here, so as long as you stop on the apex, stop anyone coming past. But yeah, it was a tough one.
Do you like the Norisring at all? Because to me, it looks like a track that would somewhat polarize opinions. It's very short. Everybody's very similar. The racing looks pretty decent. But is it a little bit frustrating at the same time?
I mean, it's a tough track, don't get me wrong. But I mean, I enjoy it. it's one of those ones you make one mistake, game over. So have to be very careful. But it's great for close racing.
Well, fantastic. Well, race 2, full reverse grid. You just said it's difficult to overtake round here. Are you going to be thinking going into this one, maybe 3 wide in turn 1 is not something you're aiming for?
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen. I've just got to sort of pick my moments and hope that I have some misfortune on the track. So we'll see how it goes.
Fantastic. We'll let you get away and start concentrating on race number 2 and maybe coming up with somewhat of a plan, which inevitably will go out the window as soon as the lights go out, I'm sure. Joel, congratulations on the race 1 victory.
Nice one, thank you.
Moving on to our second place driver, I believe it was Kyle Felvis, and he is in the interview room with us now. Kyle, congratulations on that second place. You pushed everything to try and get into the lead.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, it was a good race. There was some moments where my brake, I was stood on my brakes, but Joel just went. He did his normal line and he did it every lap, and I should have adjusted to it, but it was slower than I was used to. So I made contact with him at one point, which I do apologise for. I didn't mean to hit him, but yeah, it was a good race overall.
I was going to say, I think that's exactly when our cameras flicked over to the fight for a race lead, was exactly when that contact occurred, actually. So nice to hear that it wasn't exactly a late lunge and you weren't aiming for it, put it that way. There was also some strong defending, shall we say, at the beginning of the race with Eric Axelsson as well. Was it a little bit touch and go from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I got sandwiched between Elliot and Eric at the start of the race, and Eric sort of came across me and hit me, and we had contact. And then later on in the race, Eric tried to go grab my outside, and he was never alongside, and I sort of just closed the door, and slight contact was made. But yeah, he was never alongside, like I say, so he shouldn't have really gone for the move, really.
Going into race 2. Going to be harder to get through. You just heard me asking Joel Lask about that one as well. Is there any particular parts of the circuit that you sort of earmarked as potential overtaking opportunities, or are you just going to try and sort of see what occurs and just go for anything that appears?
To be fair, you're just going to have to see what happens, because you can't say to yourself, "Oh, we'll go for a move here," because around this track it's that tight, it's that narrow. Everyone will be doing their own thing. It's going to be a fun one, but a very difficult one.
It will indeed. Well, I'll let you go and focus. Kyle, congratulations on that second place.
Thank you, Jack.
And finally, I get to chat to our third place driver, Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Elliot, that looked like a very, very busy race from your perspective.
Yeah, it was. I mean, yeah, I guess I did kind of sandwich Kyle at the start, but got through and then kind of chased down. I think it was Oliver in third place, and then me and Kyle both got a run on him on the back straight. We kind of lunged him both, and that got Kyle second and me third, and we kind of just went from there.
Now, we noticed at Spa, your car looked a little bit loose on the rear end through Pouon. Is that carried over? Is the Honda just a little bit slippery on that rear end?
I don't know, to be honest, because it's at the chicane. It's really on off. So kind of very unpredictable around there. So I'm going to be a little bit cautious.
And race 2 then? I mean, you look like as I said, you were probably the busiest driver out there in terms of that race 1 and carving through people, lunging up the inside and everything like that. Is there going to be a way that you can sort of work together with Kyle, a little like you just said on Oliver Gibson? You sort of both had the run on him and you were able to both lunge up the inside and take advantage. Is that going to play into account, or are you just going to race your own race?
Possibly, but I think I'm just going to do my own thing, be a little cautious at turn 1 as always, and then go from there. Hopefully some people get a little bit stuck so I can just nip round the outside.
That's the dream, isn't it? Well, Elliot, good luck for race number 2, and we'll see if we speak to you afterwards.
Thank you.
And that was Elliot Dalton-Ayres finishing off our podium round for race number 1 here at the Norisring. Remember, this is round number 4 of the championship, the VRRC European Touring Car Tour, I think it's called. Unfortunately, I don't have the notes straight in front of me. But yes, it was round 4, and you'll be able to catch the second half of the season if you subscribe to the VRRC YouTube page down below. We do, or follow the Facebook. I believe we're live on Facebook now, actually, as well. So please do follow along. Stick your comments in the comments section in the chat. Give me someone to talk to, of course. A big thank you to the likes of Adrian Felvis, wanting Kyle to keep clear of the carnage and giving him a good look motivations, as well as Linda Whitlock is saying well done to HFT and people like that. So thank you very much for you guys showing the encouragement in the chat as well for your favoured drivers. Right, engine notes are rising and lights are on the screen. That could only mean one thing. For the final time here this evening, we are racing on a Wednesday night at the VRRC Touring Car Championship. It looks like a very spread out start, but with John Jones on pole position, Kenny Press alongside him. Well, not for very much longer, though, because John Jones has got an absolute rocket start, and Kenny Press hasn't. Oh, is that a big lunge up the inside? They got it all 4 wide. That's ambitious. I'm not entirely sure who's come out. Alok Iyengar, who actually had contact in the first corner. Oh, in the first race has actually managed to get into the race lead. Now I've gone higher and higher because I don't know how everybody's actually still facing in the right direction in the background. But somehow they are. No, they're not. Kenny Press ended up off the circuit after starting in second place. His car doesn't look particularly healthy. Maybe he gets back going, hopefully, without any too much dramas. Right, focusing a little bit further ahead, Jens Verhoeven's got a fantastic viewing point for the Andy Carroll versus John Jones extravaganza that's about to kick off in front of him. And this is the fight for second place, of course, remember. Jens going into the pit lane. Is that a jump start, potentially? That's normally the reason why we see a pit lane so early. They have to do a drive-through penalty if they do a jump start. That's a bit of a shame for Jens Verhoeven. Yeah, I'm just trying to get clarification on that in the Discord. We'll be able to bring you up to date with that. Of course, Rich Hayden is busy doing his race directing. Contact there between John Jones and Andy Carroll. But I tell you what, they're not getting caught too much because there's plenty of scrapping in the background. Sam Zero doesn't seem to have had a brilliant turn one. There's John Jones runs very, very, very wide through the chicane. It's still close to the door, slams the door actually on Andy Carroll. And Scott Bugner is right up there. Now, Bugner's an interesting one. Oh, Eric Axelson's in the wall in the background. And that is absolutely gutting for Eric Axelson. Wasn't the best race one. Doesn't appear to be the best race two either for him, as Andy Carroll is still actually... Oh, no, Scott Bugner's got past Andy Carroll as I was getting distracted with the background shenanigans there of Eric Axelson. As I was saying, Scott Bugner really relatively slow in race number one. What will we see in race two? I think it's important for him to get past John Jones here and to try and get a little bit of a gap before the likes of Carl Felvers manage to carve their way through, who's already into fifth position. But as Scott Bugner, late on the brakes, goes around the outside of John Jones, he gets a little bit of a tap on the rear end for good measure as well, but he has got that second place with Alok Iyengar just disappearing up the road. Saying, waving goodbye to the opposition for the time being, and now Carl Felvers has to get past the same race at the ongoing battle between Andy Carroll and John Jones, and it's aided if John Jones decides to go for the tyre wall instead. Well, it's not even a tyre wall here, is it, actually? It's just a wall. That allowed Carl Felvers to take one easy position. Oh, no, where's John Jones going, though? Up the inside. And I thought that was a little late on the brakes. I thought he was actually going to come into contact with Joel Lask, who's chasing them down as well. Andy Carroll in third place here. Somewhat watching this in the rear view mirrors, probably quite glad that he's not involved with it anymore, because it looks like John Jones is driving a little bit over his limits potentially, and lunging and driving into walls a little bit. And again, he's late on the brakes there to try and fend off an attack from other drivers, but he's actually left the door wide open as they try and go 3 wide on the exit. Carl Felvers is involved. So is Joel Lask, race 1 winner and race 1 second place, as well as John Jones is somehow still ahead of them all, but again runs so wide into the corner. Joel Lask anticipates it and cuts underneath there and gets that fourth position, I should say, to himself. Not sure where Carl Felvers has disappeared to. He's disappeared down into 10th place. Absolutely no idea how that's happened. Potentially something to do with John Jones in that chicane. Because as I said, Joel Lask anticipated that he went on the right side of John Jones. But somehow Carl Felvers has ended up on the wrong side of him. Josh Martin and Elliot Dalton-Ayres are now sat behind him, and Nicky Taylor just about to be able to get through. Now I know I have another person alongside me in the commentary box, but I haven't been able to bring him in yet because I imagine he's watching this battle just as closely as I am. And John Jones here, Rich, is certainly giving us something to shout about.
Yeah, he's getting crowded out quite a lot, isn't he? So, I see what you mean. He's been a little bit too late on the brakes a couple of times, which has caused a little bit of nudging and pushing. But, this is what reverse races are, right?
This tends to be what happens in them, but that sort of lunging up for apexes where there's a driver's rear end still in the apex, is squeezing over to Andy Carroll there, or Andy Dorman, I should say, actually. He needs to be a bit careful here, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've also got Alok out of position because of an incident as well, so we're potentially going to get some blue flags coming soon. But I'll keep an eye on that.
Well, Alok Ironguard, to be fair to him, is actually putting in some semi-decent times in comparison to what we saw from him in race 1, which of course he was involved in that incident through T1. As who's that going through? Is that Josh Martin just trying to lunge through on a few drivers there? I think it was. I think he actually ended up getting hung out of it as Carl Felvers goes through. It's just pretty much impossible to be able to keep up with, isn't it? But at the moment, Carl Felvers leads the rest of the field, which is 5th place backwards. A massive train of cars.
Yeah, it's a big train there. I think we're looking at what 3, 6. There's about 7 cars in that train, so maybe we're going to see some late braking in the next few corners. Elliot's getting pretty close to him now.
He is indeed, yeah. With the rest of the likes of Scott Bugner, Andy Carroll, and Joel Lask are in blissful isolation compared to the rest of the field, and that's exactly what they would like to be as well. Probably very happy. Oh, Andy Dorman, that's you need to be careful there. John Jones needs to be a bit careful as again. Here comes Paolo Tempera. They're squeezing into the wall. My goodness me, there's a lot of squeezing going on here. Oliver Gibson, who had such a good qualifying and such a good race 1 as well, getting right in on the mix. He wants to get past this battle as quickly as possible because he can see it all going a bit Pete Tong. To be honest, John Jones again hits the wall and comes back across the circuit and ends up hitting into Andy Dorman as well. John Jones is and Andy Dorman rejoins and then gets another contact from behind with, I believe, that was potentially Sam Zero. There's a lot of carnage in the rear end of this field.
Yeah, I'm going to jump back into the channel, guys. I'll speak to you later.
Yeah, I can completely understand that one. Rich, go and give them something to think about.
No
They need, I think a few of these drivers potentially need reminding that this is a street circuit and it's not always as easy as it is on a normal circuit, shall we say. But at the moment, I think Rich said that Alok Ironguard is out of position. To be fair, there's an argument to say that some people would agree. He is out of position. He's in the race lead, and that isn't where we normally see him. But he's really deserving of that race lead at the moment because he hasn't been caught that badly by Scott Bugner, who, as I said before, is not necessarily the fastest at this circuit, then Andy Carroll and Joel Lask. And really, it's Joel Lask who also admitted that he's not the fastest either. So your likelihood is you're waiting for the likes of Carl Felvers to catch up, but he has been so preoccupied with the likes of Elliot Daltonet and Nicky Taylor and Josh Martin, Paolo Tempera, and pretty much the rest of the entire field, trying to find a way out of this battle and able to pursue the rest of them. But as the brakes get too hot, as they keep battling, the tyres get overheated as well, you'll find that they just can't go as quickly as they're hoping for, and then they end up, the chasing drivers end up making those mistakes as well. We're currently watching Paolo Tempera, though, who has got past the likes of John Jones and Paul Laramie and Eric Axelson, who's somewhat of a recovering driver. You can just see him in the background there. It's not been the best evening for Eric Axelson, I think. It's not quite as bad as Paul Ricard. John Jones lunging at the inside of Oliver Gibson. Is Gibson going to go for that undercut? He certainly is. He's able to get the car up the inside, but John Jones able to get that run on him just by missing that apex and getting the car straightened up nice and easily as well. Ethan Hill is in the YouTube chat, which means he's not in the race. And in fact, no, he's not in the race. He appears to be in 17th position, but to be fair, he would be in the, if he just put that he can't catch a break in the championship in the YouTube chat, I think he'd hotkey at this point in time. I wouldn't be surprised if he was still driving around while able to just hotkey that in the YouTube chat, because frankly, it seems to be the same message every single time, Ethan, isn't it? And it's not any slight on you at all. It's just technical issues and other drivers potentially. Just the wrong place at the wrong time constantly, it seems. So yeah, a bit of a shame for Ethan. Bit of a shame, really. There's actually an option. We could bring Ethan Hill into the commentary box. I trust him not to say anything he shouldn't. So Ethan, if you fancy coming into the oh, his wheel disconnected. Oh, my days. Right, well, Ethan, if you fancy coming into the commentary box to have a little bit of a chat to us whilst we're driving round, I wouldn't say no to it. That's it's up to you, but as I said, gotta make sure you don't say anything about anybody you don't want to say anything about anything to, if that makes sense. Eric Axelson getting past on John Jones, I should say. I thought it was Oliver Gibson, but then it appeared that Oliver Gibson was actually chasing down Paolo Tempera. Joel Lask, now these are the 4 drivers that we haven't seen very much at all, are the 4 at the front of the field. Joel Lask is currently sat behind Andy Carroll, and then Carl Felvers, Elliot Dalton Ayres are the 2 drivers that have managed to break away from the rest of the pack. and are catching up nicely to the rest of them. Ethan Hill says, "Bring me in." Well, I'll leave that up to Lewis Edwards who's sorting the broadcast out, because I've been commentating for about a year and a half with VRRC. I still haven't got the ability to drag people in and out. I've got Ethan Hill with me now. Ethan, I don't know if you can watch Lewis Edwards stream, but you can watch alongside me then as well. If you watch his live feed on Discord, and you can watch alongside me, you can give us some of your opinions of what you'd do about some of the racing over the next 5 or so minutes. But first of all, tell me what happened to you.
Anyway, good evening, everyone. Wheel disconnected. I tried to flick up the gears, and the wheel just went. Just simply put. I mean, I will say I am quite unlucky in race 2s anyway, so I wasn't really expecting much, but I was just trying to push forward as much as I could. I had a good rhythm in race 1, so yeah, it's just annoying, but it's racing, it is what it is.
I was going to say, you've had a bit of an unfortunate championship so far in general, haven't you, really? You've had plenty of technical issues and, of course, on-track incidents as well that have kept you out of some decent scoring positions. Has it just been a character-building season, shall we say?
I will say so. I will say also, front-wheel drive, I don't mind it, but it's not like I don't completely hate it, if you get what I'm saying.
It's not your cup of tea, necessarily.
No, it's just about learning, just about trying to learn as much as possible. I mean, Nicky and Kyle and Jens are all perfect for that, obviously in HFT. So it is just about learning, and hopefully just a bit more luck comes my way, hopefully soon in this championship.
Well, we haven't announced what is the next championship, and I won't give any sort of indication away on what the next championships might be or anything like that. But you never know, they might end up coming your way in a rear-wheel drive, or you might end up taking what you've learned in the front-wheel drive and end up putting that into practice. That's basically what sim racing is, isn't it? It's the ability to jump in any car and be able to learn as much as you can and try and translate it in. And that's one of the joys of sim racing, in my opinion, is the fact you get to try out so many different cars, which in real racing, you wouldn't ever get that opportunity. You pick one car in one championship and you're stuck with that for the season because it's too expensive to do anything else.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, racing in real life is now so expensive, and the good thing about a sim is you can find a mod, and there you go, you can drive the car. So it's just, again, experience in a front-wheel drive car in a sim or rear-wheel drive, if you want to go into real-life racing, is perfect.
Absolutely is, but just we'll get back onto that conversation in a couple of seconds' time, because John Jones and Jens Verhoeven seem to be keen on trading paint between themselves, and just as I say it, actually, they prove my point exactly here, and it's getting a little bit too touchy-feely as they go over the start-finish line. This isn't the fight for the top 10 anymore. Eric Axels and Oliver Gibson are a little bit further up the road, and in fact, you'll probably be able to see them coming into your shot now. John Jones late on the brakes yet again. He's quite often doing that. Actually, he managed to get the apex that time and get on the power early, but it's Jens Verhoeven gets up the inside. Around here, Ethan, this is quite common, isn't it? Everybody's so desperate to try and get those positions away from each other.
It is, because the track is so short, quite tight. There's not many corners to overtake. There's only there's 2 hairpins and a chicane, pretty much. So it's just trying to find the right point to make your move. As you can see, Jens behind the back of John. He's looking to go to the outside. Maybe try for the switchback. He does. Oh, and he's half spun. Here comes Jens though. They're going wheel to wheel. They can't get off each other, can they? Can they, Jack?
No, it's as if they're magnetised to each other, and John Jones just seems to be turning into him at this point as well, as he tries to cut up Ibaka's inside. Maybe that's what he was trying to do before, but we know he's going to be the last of the late breakers, whether or not he should be. But he does manage to get the position back. Jens Verhoeven. Oh, and again, John Jones just seems to yank the wheel over to the side. This is it's a little bit too much in my opinion, Ethan. If you were one of these drivers, would you be thinking this is potentially a little bit too much contact?
I would say so. I mean, obviously, touring car, you do get a bit of contact. I mean, it is always good to see this close racing. I mean, you see John defending for his life for Jens. But Jens again trying around the outside. John late on the brakes as usual. Jens trying to go for the switchback again. No, he's going to stay in. No, John moves. So look, John is obviously really worried about the toe. So have to see what happens here into the first corner again, a wheel to wheel.
They are indeed. And is the toe a powerful thing around here? We were having a chat to Oliver Gibson. He didn't think that it was going to be as big a deal. And, just as I thought Jens Verhoeven had the move made, to be honest. But again, John just decided to lunge up the inside, but oh my days, more contact. But I suppose we shouldn't be too surprised now. We've been watching it for the past 5 laps, haven't we? The flash of the light, Jens Verhoeven shows his displeasure as John Jones goes very narrow through the chicane. This time doesn't miss the apex, doesn't miss the corner though, as he's just holding these guys up though. And Andy Dorman, who had that half spin before, maybe a little bit of contact with Paul Laramie, is right in the thick of it yet again. Is it frustrating around here, Ethan, as in terms of racing? Because, as you said, there are only 4 corners. Only 2 of them are realistic overtaking opportunities. Do you get a little bit desperate?
Yes, because I mean the toe is very powerful. Like I don't know if Ollie was saying, the toe is like extremely powerful. If you're at the right distance, I mean you may see Andy here because he's quite close. He should be able to get a good toe and a good run into turn 1. So. I mean, but John again fighting back with Jens. They're still side by side. John again really late. Goes a bit too late this time, and lets Jens and Andy through. And Paul Laramie's now arriving on the show as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably the end to that race-long battle that John Jones was trying to put up there with a few of the other drivers. Scott Bugner's got into the race lead all of a sudden. Aylock Iyengar, the cork in the bottle, seems to have been shifted out of there somewhat. Andy Carroll and Joel Lask are pretty much trying to flank him on either side as they come across the start-finish line with 4 minutes to go. Scott Bugner, after what was a disappointing race 1 from him. Joel Lask, where are you off to? As Andy Carroll bashes him out of the way, and amazingly, Aylock Iyengar leads this race once again after contact and missed braking zones and all sorts of things going into turn 1 as we cut our cameras straight back to this race lead. It's all kicking off, and look at that, the HFT boy of Kyle Felvis has come to join in the mix. 2nd place in race number 1. Joel Lask just ahead of him, who was 1st place in race number 1. Now 5th and 4th. They're going to try and work together. Well, they probably won't try and work together, will they, Ethan, to try and move forward, but they will try and take advantage of any potential mistakes as Andy Carroll lunges up the inside of Aylock Iyengar, and Scott Bugner almost turns him round. A flash of the lights by Aylock Iyengar. This is as high up as we've seen him in this championship so far. He doesn't want to be bullied out of this, and nor should he, to be honest, Ethan, because when you are a reverse grid and you have this opportunity, you don't want to see it slip through your fingers with 3 minutes to go.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, with the reverse grids, it's so easy to have like loads of quite. I mean, top people at the back trying to push through. I would say that like some of the slower people, you could say, like who don't have much experience, are obviously near the front. So it's a very good mix. Obviously, you saw John was fighting with me. I don't know if you saw in the stream, until obviously my wheel disconnected. John was fighting with me quite hard, and obviously he's been fighting really hard with Jens for. Was it 12th or 11th position?
For everyone, to be honest.
Yeah.
He really didn't want to give up any positions, to be fair.
No, not, and I don't blame him, to be honest. I mean, obviously, because the track's so short, it is quite easy to keep the cars behind. So you can brake quite late, you can turn in quite late, you can try and ease everyone offline. So it is tough, but it can be easy to get an overtake if you get it done properly and in the right place.
Well, let's see if Carl Felvis can do exactly that, because he's lining up a move on Scott Bugner, but Joel Lask sees an opportunity to go to the inside. He ends up hitting Bugner and Aylock Iyengar. Scott Bugner been turned around by a firing Joel Lask, let's be honest. And Aylock Iyengar as well, the driver I probably feel most sorry for in that particular battle, ends up all the way down in 8th place now. Scott Bugner still remains in 4th after that contact. It allowed Carl Felvis through. Out of everyone, though, Ethan, it allowed Elliot Dalton-Hares through to 2nd place. And to be honest, I couldn't even tell you where he came from at that point.
Neither could I. I mean, I've also seen that Nicky's now arriving on the scene. Scott's still here, chasing down Kyle. Kyle's now obviously chasing down Elliot. So it's going to be a good 2 laps, potentially. 2 laps to the end of the race. So see.
Yeah, likely. Yeah, likely, because Andy Carroll's about to come across the line. It's a 55-second lap, and we've got a 1 minute and 10 to go. So, yeah, one more lap to bunch them all back up, and another lap to see them throw everything and the kitchen sink at each other as well. Where is Joel Lask ended up? He's down in 7th place now, isn't he, with Josh Martin ahead of him. So, oh my days, Josh Martin and Joel Lask going side by side into that. Is that the first corner? It is the first corner, actually. There are only 4 corners, Jack. I should know the order by now, shouldn't I? After watching it for the last 20 minutes. Yeah, Joel Lask and Josh Martin switching positions and switching paint by the seams of it as they go through the chicane now. It does seem to be Joel Lask's position. Josh Martin not able to have an answer back for the time being. But Andy Carroll, Ethan, I tell you what, he's a hot and cold driver, isn't he, Andy Carroll? He's either brilliant or about a second off the pace. But today in this race too, he's been brilliant.
He has been. I mean, he picked his moments at the right time, picking his way through the fields again at the right time, which is key round here. He's got one more lap to go, but I see there's a battle behind for P2 still.
There is indeed, yes, and with 10 seconds on the clock as they go into the final corner, this means it will be the final lap of the race, and Elliot Daltonez, with a little bit of a lock-up, allows Carl Felvis just with a whiff of an opportunity to look up the inside of Elliot, who, of course, was so quick in qualifying. He didn't manage to get that pole position, and in fact, he ended up in 5th, actually, but he held on to that pole position for a long time with a really quick time really early on in the session. What can he do here with a 3rd place in race number 1? He'll be hoping to get at least one better in race number 2. Carl Felvis wants that 2nd place again to have 100% of 2nd places here this evening. I'm sure he probably would have liked one step up on the podium as well, but Andy Carroll has managed to hold him off for the time being and hold everybody else off. And as Elliot Daltonez looks like he's held off Carl Felvis, we're going to see a very happy Alfa Romeo driver come across the line, and it is Andy Carroll. Always a very much an entertainer in terms of the double distance races. Well, he's an entertainer here now in the sprint races as well. Elliot Daltonez and Carl Felvis round out the top 3 with Scott Bugner in 4th and Nicky Taylor in 5th. And as they drag race to the line, it's Paolo Tempera versus Oliver Gibson, and it's Oliver Gibson who locks out that top 10 position. Eric Axelson ended up in 9th, but Joel Lask ended up in 6th. I'll run you through the top 10 because I've done it in completely the wrong order. Andy Carroll on top, Elliot Daltonez in 2nd place, Kyle Felvis in 3rd, Scott Bugner 4th, Nicky Taylor in 5th, Joel Lask 6th, Josh Martin 7th, Alok Iyengar in 8th place, 9th was Eric Axelson, and the top 10, as I've just mentioned, rounded out by Oliver Gibson. So much drama up and down the field. A big thank you to Ethan Hill, who jumped in and had a quick chat to us as well. It may have been a bit of a shame that you weren't out there racing, Ethan, but a big thanks for coming in and giving me someone to talk to. Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to before we let you go and enjoy the rest of the evening?
I just want to say thank you to, everyone that, Kyle, Nicky, Jens, that all support, that help me get as quick as I possibly can. Family as well, it's obviously a big thing. They know that I do this, and they're really proud. You can say they're really proud, but they also like watching me doing this as well. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ethan, for coming in and having a chat. We're going to talk to our top 3 straight after this break. And for the final time, we are back in the room, and we've got one new driver and 2 returning drivers to the commentary box, actually. And the one that is new is Andy Carroll. Andy Carroll taking a race victory there. You must be buzzing with that.
Oh, that was hard work. My word. Yeah, that track. That track is, it's so tough to catch back up to people, so tough to overtake. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be lots of things to look at the debrief on Monday, and hopefully I get to keep that win because, I just got cut off a bit by Alok going into that first corner, and I had to sort of swerve out the way and brake at the same time. So I think lost a bit of braking performance and kind of just went into the side of Scott, I think. So yeah, apart from that, I tried to keep it as clean as possible and followed Scott for a bit, hoping he was going to close down A-lock. And he did, and then it was just kind of four of us all close together, and yeah, I came out of it in the lead at one point, and thankfully, wasn't long to go, so I just managed to keep it clean for a few more laps. And
From what
taking a win in this championship is pretty special because there are so many quick guys.
Well, from what we saw, I think out of all the contact that Scott Bugner endured in that race, I don't think yours is going to be the one that's mainly on the top of his priority list, to be honest. It looked like it was hard in the first couple of minutes, Andy, and then it got quite easy for you as you were looking in your rearview mirrors, probably watching all the carnage on behind, and then all of a sudden it got a bit more intense again, wasn't it? Is that lapse in the middle where you're sort of just putting in hot laps and the adrenaline drops a bit? Is it hard to then pick yourself back up to have to fight for those places again?
Yeah, I didn't want to get too close to Scott because then you just end up slowing each other down. And I could see him sort of slowly catching A-lock. And then for a couple of laps, he was taking about a second out of him, I think. So at that point, and then of course, we all bunched up. And I had, I think it was Joel to worry about. But yeah, those middle laps where you just you've got a bit of space on track and you can just kind of drive as you were in quali and practice and do some really quick laps. That was quite a relief just to have that little bit of a breather because otherwise it was full on all the way.
Yeah, it certainly looked pretty full on, that's for sure. But it ended up with the race victory you were hoping for, and by a semi-convincing margin in the end as well. Was a big relief on that last couple of laps where you just thought, oh my days, this is going to happen, sort of thing. As you said, in this championship, it's a difficult race victory to get under your belt, isn't it? At the best of times, and especially around the Norisring, where overtaking is clearly very difficult.
Yeah, as I say, if you'd offered me one win the whole series, I would have bitten your hand off because you just look at those sort of top 6 or 7 guys and they're all incredibly quick and they're all incredibly competitive. And so I'm pretty chuffed to be able to get a win.
Well, don't put yourself down, Andy, because you're clearly one of the very competitive drivers in this championship as well. It's, as you said, taken a victory. And it has awarded you, it's given you the opportunity to win the driver of the round as well. So big congratulations, Andy, for getting that one, that coveted sticker or trophy or medal or whatever gets thrown your way. I'm not entirely sure these days, or whether it's
Chris,
just personal pride.
£50 note, I'm told.
Well, you can take that one up with Rich Hayden, I'll tell you. That's more than I get anyway. No, I'm kidding. I won't get into that. But brilliant, Andy. Congratulations on winning driver of the round, and I'm sure we'll speak to you next week.
Thanks, Jack.
Right, moving on to our second place driver. We've already had a chat to him once, but it was for third. This time, for second. Elliot Dalton Ayres, big congratulations for that second step on the podium.
Thank you. I kind of did what I said I would do in the first interview, where I'd kind of let people do what they do at the turn one, just got a few around the outside, and then kind of spaced out between a few of them. And then, of course, me and Carl were catching the maybe 4 or 5 in front, and saw that one of them went into the back of the other, and it just caused carnage. And luckily, there was a nice gap on the inside, which I took.
I was going to say, I had, as you know, he's still here actually, Ethan Hill in the commentary box, and neither of us could actually remember where you went into that corner, in what position you went into that corner, to be honest. You just sort of appeared in second place, or in third place, or wherever you were at that particular point. Was that something you could see coming, or was it a case of literally you just took avoiding action and then you just appeared at this place on the track?
I saw them going 3 wide or something like that up to turn 1, and I was like, that's not going to work. So I kind of just hung out so I could get maybe a good exit, get a place or 2, and then they took each other out, and then I just nipped on the inside, and that got me second, and then kind of chasing down Andy, kind of hoping that maybe I'd catch him before the line and get him, but nah, he was a bit too quick, so I settled for second, and 2 podiums, you can't be too mad.
I was going to say, you're talking about trying to catch Andy Carroll. You're talking about settling for second and everything like that. But you nearly didn't get second place because on that last lap, you did have a fiery Kyle Felvers trying to hunt you down as well. And into that final corner, there was an opportunity that you might end up with third place again.
Yeah, I was kind of in disbelief that I took second. That I was kind of like missing my braking zones, and then in the last couple of corners, I saw that Kyle was right on my bumper, but then I had to hold on.
Well, hold on is exactly what you did, Elliot. Big congratulations on the double podium, and I'm sure we'll be speaking to you next week if you carry on this sort of form. As we move over to our bottom step of the podium, but that is not to say that it wasn't a damn good race for himself. And it's Kyle Felvers, again, a second podium of the day for yourself, Kyle, and I'm guessing you're not entirely disappointed with third place.
No, I mean third place is great. Happy to be on the podium again. Like Elliot was saying, that race was just let people do their thing. Going into turn one, it was 3 wide up in front, and to be fair, I don't know what happened. Like, yeah, it all happened so quickly. I think Joel tried to go down my inside and completely missed his braking point and then hit everyone else, and then I was just stuck there, and Elliot somehow managed to go through over the curb, and yeah, it was all a bit sketchy, but yeah, it got us the P3, so.
I was going to say, you're adding certain elements to your racing now in terms of your racecraft and everything like that. Yeah, okay, there's still room for improvement in terms of some sort of, sort of irrational decisions here, there, and everywhere, as there is for every single driver. But you seem to be much better at sort of that awareness of what other drivers are going to do and your sort of car placement as a result of that. Is that something you feel like you're improving on? Because you've always been quite quick.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely improving on it. I think this race shows you definitely have to improve on it because things can happen left, right, and center, really. Everyone can make mistakes, everyone's human, so you've just got to be on it, and your reaction times just need to be perfect, and you need to basically predict what's happening.
Absolutely, and you seem to be doing that a little bit better every single week as well. And if you continue to improve at the rate that you've improved at front wheel drive with your racecraft, then I'm sure we'll be talking about many more championships with you. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint. I think you might be in a championship lead. I will confirm that on the stream a little later on, but that must be a pretty exciting thing. The prospect of that must be pretty exciting.
Yeah, feels good. I knew that if I had a good round, and obviously Scott in race one, he didn't do the best that I think Scott could have done. To be fair, I thought Scott was going to do a lot better than he did, but I got lucky with that one. Scott not too far up the field, which allowed me to gain points really, and then race two, Scott got really unlucky with the incident, but yeah.
Yes, there was plenty to talk about between the drivers. Let's put it that way for that particular incident. But we'll let that slide over to the privacy of the Discord servers, shall we? Kyle, big congratulations on P3 and P2 earlier on in the evening as well. We'll probably be speaking to you next week.
Thanks, Jack.
Right, that is all the drivers for our race 2 as well. And then we're nearly getting to the end of the evening. And, well, there's less waffle because me and Andy aren't discussing the evening. So I'll just get straight on to the championship standings, shall we? So everybody can pretty much finish listening to me droning on for 2 hours. Kyle Felvers, I did mention it. I did hint on it that he is top of the championship standing. Sorry, with 129 points, the biggest margin back to Scott Bugner that we've seen in the entire championship so far. It's always been about 1 or 2 points between the top two. Now it's a staggering 14. But of course, those drop scores do always hide under the surface. So there's still an opportunity for Scott Bugner to pull that one back. Josh Martin, again, an evening that sort of flew under the radar a little bit, but he is still in third place thanks to the fact that Eric Axelsen had a pretty poor evening from his standards. 2 points between third and fourth, and then, of course, now, though, Joel Lask only 2 points behind Eric Axelsen. So all of a sudden, that top 3 fight is now for 3 drivers, I would say, rather than just the 2. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who had a storming evening, up to 6th position, and Nikki Taylor as well in 7th on 94 and 92. So again, not the end of the world, not that far away from third place, but equally definitely outside shouts for the time being. And you can see all the way down to Paolo Tempera. I believe Jack Smith, who is ninth for the championship, tied on points with Andy Carroll. I think I saw on YouTube chat somewhere that he ended up not taking part in race number 2. He just didn't have the confidence in the car, I don't think. So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
I'll just put in there. Actually, he's not feeling very well. He's been unwell all day. He did race 1, but he basically just said that he wasn't feeling great, so he had to pull out race 2. Also, Stuart Vickers' pedals went down in race 1, which is why he wasn't in race 2.
There we go. Thank you very much, Rich Hayden, always prowling around in the background of the commentary booth. No, it's all good. It's all good. Those little nuggets of information are always nice to have thrown our way. Right, we're going to move on from the championship and talk about what else is going on. And I tell you what, for once, because I am the lead commentator for once so far, I'm going to throw to Rich Hayden to tell us about everything else that's going on in VRRC. Because let's face it, who's better qualified than the person who runs the damn show?
I don't know anything, mate. It's nothing to do. It's nothing to do with me. Interestingly, Nürburgring, which is next week's round, is live, and Andy Dorman is already in there doing laps. So hopefully, he'll get a better performance next week. Also, I've had a plethora of incident reviews requested after the race 2, so it looks like I'm going to be busy on Monday night doing the race debrief with everybody. Yeah. But anyway, what's going on? So next week, next Wednesday night, is the next round of touring car, which is at the Nürburgring. We're currently running the last round of our time attack, our single-seater time attack series, which is the 2022 Formula 1 car at Canada. And then we are going to move on to some new things. So we're deep in planning for 2023. We're going to have a couple of changes in what we do for the better. We're changing our driver ranking system to be more detailed and to be fairer to the bottom end of the drivers. So that's going to be launched in January, and we're going to do some trophies around it and stuff like that for the end of the year, which will be quite exciting, like a little awards ceremony. But yeah, coming in the new year, I'm not going to tell you what the next championship is, which starts 1st of February, but it's going to be pretty exciting, and it's going to be slightly different to what we're doing now. So we are swapping to rear-wheel drive. But we're going to do something slightly different. And we've got a load of time attacks planned in for next year, and also quite a few special events as well. Ooh. So we're going to start doing, I hear you say. So we're going to start having a 3-week break between championships, and we're going to run mini special events in those 3 weeks, which we're going to broadcast on Wednesday nights. And I can tell you what the first special event will be. So it's going to be a 3-round NASCAR special. So getting those NASCARs on the ovals, and let's see what these guys can do in 200-mile-an-hour ovals.
I was going to say, you have the wrong commentator in the booth right now to get excited for that one, to be honest, because Andy is a massive NASCAR fan.
I know.
So he's going to be very excited. I've covered a little bit of NASCAR, but it'll definitely be Andy who's the one who's getting excited about that one. Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Rich, for jumping in. I think it's about that time we wrap up the show. So big thank you to everybody who's jumped in on YouTube chat, liked, shared, subscribed, commented, all of that sort of good shenanigans. It's been an absolute pleasure being your host. Big thank you to Rich Hayden for jumping in, and Lewis Edwards, and a special thanks to Ethan Hill as well, who's jumped in and gave me someone to chat to for the last 10 minutes of the second race. Hopefully his wheel won't disconnect, or his computer won't break, or his internet won't go down in the next couple of races as well, and we actually see him out there on circuit. Right,
I really hope so, Jack. I really hope so.
He's still here and all. Oh, fair play. Yes, and if you are wondering where we are next week, Rich has just mentioned it, but of course we're staying in Germany. We're off to the Nürburgring this time round, and hopefully people won't turn up to the Norisring thinking it's the Nürburgring like they do in real life, apparently.
Yeah. Next
Wednesday, same time, same place. We'll see you then.